Basically, whenever he would ask me to eat, instead of saying, how was lunch, or what did you think of lunch, he would go, how was the, or do you want to get them, are you ready to, I'm literally like,
No, he did not. Hey girls, welcome to the Polish Paradigm. Let's get straight to it. It's common knowledge that once you get the ick from a guy, it's nearly impossible to look past it. Here's a compilation of first date icks. Hope you enjoy and stay tuned till the end for my personal ick story that led me to break up with a millionaire.
This past weekend, I got a really bad ick from this guy, and like every time I think about it, I cringe, and I just have to share it with you because I don't want to go through this alone. And I also want to confirm that this is like a valid ick, and I'm not going insane. I went out with the girlies, as one does and as one should, and I live 40 minutes from downtown, so I was like, let me go over to this guy's house because he lives 5 minutes away. How convenient. He picks me up and I go straight to his bed. I'm tired. Like, I am not a robot. I want to go to sleep. And like, he was totally fine with that. Like, he went to sleep too, but first, he brings milk and cookies into the bed while I'm sleeping. I didn't know he was eating them, and he gets up and I turn over and he left the milk on the bed and the milk spills. He comes into the room and he starts throwing the biggest temper tantrum about how I accidentally spilled the cup of milk and I didn't even know it was in the bed. And I'm not kidding. He literally is crying that he doesn't have his milk and cookies anymore. Mind you, this man is 30 years old. He makes me get up knowing I'm drunk out of my mind and change his sheets for him and doesn't even help me. Cries the entire night about how he doesn't get his milk and cookies and does not talk to me for the rest of the night. Is that normal or not?
The year was 2000. I was in college, I was working at a pool hall, and the bartender and I used to get along. We would talk, but I had a boyfriend. So groups of people would hang out after work, and we always got along well, and he kind of made moves a few times, but I was like, I have a boyfriend. But it's not that there was no interest, And so then 3 years later, I'm working in a restaurant an hour away, and I had just broken up with someone, and he walks in, and I was like, I had pigtails in my hair that night for some unknown reason that I'm still embarrassed about. It was like a thing that I was trying. And he remembered me and was like, oh my God, I just moved to this city. Like tonight, I was sitting out on my front stoop taking a break from moving in. My neighbors invited me. And I was like, maybe this is fate. This feels like very star-crossed. So we dated a couple months and I started to notice things. Like he would be like, my ex-girlfriend was so tall. She was so blonde. And he had this thing with his L's that just made me, and it would be like, if you're looking for a blonde girl, then just don't date me. I don't know what you're trying to convey to me here. And he would always be like, you can only get cool clothes in New York. They just don't really have the kind of clothes I like anywhere in Boston. And he was referring to this one godforsaken shirt where it had a big cuffs he would roll up to reveal paisleys inside. I swear to God, I still get the ick just from paisleys. Point number 3, he only perched on furniture. So we'd be on an outdoor patio somewhere and he was always perched, And it was, once in a while I'd be like, why are you sitting like that? And he'd be like, oh, does it bother you that I sit like this? And I'd be like, just sit in a chair like a goddamn human being, These were certainly not the only factors. There were less superficial things, but I'll just stick to that because that's enough, right? And so I finally told him I didn't want to see him anymore. And he was like, could we have one final brunch? I feel like I need closure. Fine, I will grant you one final brunch. And then at brunch, he's like, could I just walk you back to your place? I just feel like I need more closure. And I'm starting, it's grating now, right? Okay, it's been enough. We already did the brunch. That was awkward. That was uncomfortable. I was just trying to have a nice goodbye. And so he's following me to my apartment and I'm starting to get really irritated. And he's like, so maybe we could just keep dating. And I lost it. I was like, you're making me nauseous right now. I'm feeling nauseous being around you. And I don't think I've ever been so mean to anyone, but I didn't know how to make this stop. I need to go inside now. I don't want you to come. I am feeling sick. At the time, I had an internship where they did not give us anything to do. I was maybe redacting documents half the day, and that was it. And so I used to spend a lot of time on Craigslist. This is 2003 now. There wasn't a whole lot else to do online. I would sometimes read the news. I would sometimes try to learn another language, and then I would spend a lot of time perusing Craigslist, mostly missed connections. I became obsessed with them. And I don't know what brought me to this point. It was just pure boredom. I wanted to generate some activity, a little interest, intrigue in the course of my day. And so I posted a personal ad on Craigslist. And it may be one of the most embarrassing things I've ever written. It was totally anonymous, and it was just this stream of consciousness list of things. Like, I like night better than day. It got more specific than that, but it was incredibly cringeworthy, so embarrassing. And you know who answered? This guy. I don't know how he knew it was me, and he wrote some sarcastic plot reply being like, I'm short and fat, but if you'd be willing to meet somewhere uber cool in the city, I think you and I could really work out. And I was like, how did he find me again the third time? I did not answer that email because I was just too horrified, both at myself and at him. And then he kept coming into the bar where I worked, and he would come on dates like all the time and just sit at the corner and act like he didn't know who I was. And I ignored him until I no longer worked there, and I've never seen him again.
This is why I'll never entertain a dude just for brunch, dinner, drinks that I wasn't into. If a guy gave me an ick, he'd have to pay me to take me out, because it would not be worth my time just for a meal. I don't think cutting things off with someone needs a date. These days, if you're dating for just a couple months anyways, I feel like it's acceptable to cut it off via text. With some of these dudes, it's safer that way.
Here are 5 icks that I have on a first date. We're starting off strong with number 1. When a man stands behind me and is expecting me to speak to the host. Why am I speaking? That's your job. 2. When I tell him what I want on the menu, and when the waiter comes, he looks at me to respond. Once again, why am I speaking? I think you guys can tell that I like a man who takes the lead, and when it comes to etiquette and chivalry, I like when the man speaks up and, and do all of that on my behalf. 3. After ordering our drinks, does he not ask if I'm hungry or offer us enjoying dinner? Which also coincides if he goes, I'm not really hungry, so I won't be eating. Okay, but I'm hungry. To me, it's a bit awkward and faux pas if he says, I don't want to eat anything, but you get food, so I'm the only one eating. Or if he does not offer us to eat at all while I'm staring at a food menu and he just wants to have drinks. It's a little awkward. If we are getting food, if I'm expressing my indecisiveness between 2 options, if he doesn't offer us to get both and share it. I am just very used to the men that I have dated in the past to always say, you can get whatever you want, you can get both. It's not an issue. We can share these plates. I love food too, and why should we limit ourselves? And that's kind of what I like and prefer, because even when I date myself and I'm alone, I'm gonna get what the hell I want. And I would hope that the man that I'm dating, who's trying to impress me, is not gonna make me limit myself on what we can have on the menu. And 5, when the bill comes, if he does not immediately put his card down. I have never had this issue before. I've never been on a date where a man expected me to pay. It doesn't matter if it was a first date or hundreds of dates with the same guy. So although I've never experienced this issue, it would be an ick if when the bill came, a man just stared at it and didn't automatically put his card down or say, yeah, this is clearly my role to pay for this. So yeah, these are my icks on a first date. Follow for more. I will be doing a couple more of these types of formats. Happy dating.
You want to know what gives me genuinely the biggest ick when it comes to dating? Is when you first start talking to a guy, I'm talking the first week, okay? And then all of a sudden he makes the conversation inappropriate for absolutely no reason. And then no matter how many times you try to change the topic, it always ends up redirecting. He redirects the conversation back to being inappropriate. Are you 12? Are you 12? No, you're 30? Weird. That's weird. That's really weird, okay? It's it could have happened, but now that you've given me the ick, that you have the mind of a 12-year-old boy and have no other thoughts than that, definitely not gonna get it. It's where is the substance nowadays? Where is the substance? And on top of that, where is the common sense when it comes to interacting with women as a man? Because like I said, if we're attracted to you and we get along well and you have a great personality and the first date goes well and the second date goes well or however long or whatever, there's a very strong possibility that, that type of thing is going to end up happening. Because for me, it's natural for relationships to include some type of intimacy. But if your conversation goes from oh, what do you do for work? What's your favorite color? Blah, 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 something gross, it's going to be weird. And it's going to be gross. And it's going to be never responding to you again type of vibe. Like, does anybody else get annoyed by this? Because the last time I ever had this problem was probably like, I don't remember, back in October. And I remember getting on Tinder and you would match with a really cute guy and all that came out is his mouth was something pathetic like that. And it's like, come on, man, like, you're cute and now you're ugly for your personality. That was my PSA to men, to don't be weird on dating apps. That's all.
Okay, I want to talk about something that went wrong on one of my dates with someone that I was excited about, a Newport boy, if you've been following my story. I've honestly just kind of lost interest in dating him, but I want to explain why. I feel like maybe this will be a good learning lesson for some men who are out dating and maybe give some insight into how women feel on first dates. I don't even know how him and I matched on Hinge, to be quite honest, because he lives in Newport Beach, but I was still open to it because obviously I'm just looking for the right guy. Newport Beach is only an hour and a half away from me. So if he ended up being like wonderful, it's really not that big of a deal. Chatted for a couple weeks. We did a lot of voice messaging back and forth, and I was so excited to go on a first date with him. He ended up driving out to me, which is like, again, an hour and a half drive, which I thought was really thoughtful and I did appreciate. Didn't like plan a date or anything because, you know, he was coming to my hood, which I totally understood. So I planned everything for the first date. Everything seemed pretty great. I really liked him. He was definitely handsome, attractive, and I feel like that same chemistry that we had with like the voice messages was still there in person. The only thing I noticed in person that I feel like you really can't get over text messages or voice messages back and forth on the phone is that I felt like he really dominated the conversation in person, which I would have never known on voice messages because it's just like you send one, they send one. So I didn't have that experience of what it was like to have a real like dynamic in-person conversation with him, and I kind of felt like he took over a lot. So I was paying attention to that, but that wasn't like enough of a red flag. I just didn't love it. We went to dinner. He paid for dinner, which was great. I always really appreciate when a guy pays for dinner. And then we had already had our first kiss. So when we were saying goodbye to each other at dinner, it was time for me to go home and time for him to go home. We were doing like a goodnight kiss, which was great. I was like all for it. And then he just got really handsy and was like putting his hands like in my shirt, like caressing me up here, and was like grabbing me from underneath like at the bottom, and like it just was too much. What really bothered me about the situation was I had mentioned like, oh, it's time to go home. It's like 11:30. It was almost midnight and it's our first date. Like, I'm not hooking up with you. Sorry. And in my head, I was just like, I want to get home. And he had mentioned a couple times like, oh, well, why don't I come over? Like, we can cuddle, etc., etc. And I'm not an idiot. Like, not an idiot. No, you're not coming to my house. I barely know you. I've just met you for the first time. And also, this is our first date. So like, no, not interested. And he asked me 3 different times. Like, answer is no, dude. It kind of like ruined my date experience for me, because for the most part, I had a pretty good date. And then when he did that, I just felt like, I don't know, kind of violated. I just got very like, oh, okay, like good night. And we left it at that. He even sent me a text message saying something about almost exploding on his way home. I just feel like that's something on a first date. Like, for me, the goal is to feel very safe and to feel like you're a gentleman and that you respect me. So the next morning, I just didn't know exactly how I felt about that date. And I didn't say anything to him. I just kept chatting with him, and I was like, maybe he just had like too much wine to drink and he wasn't being himself. I gave him the benefit of the doubt. We talked for a little bit more, and then he asked if I wanted to come down and drive to him in Newport, which, to be honest, I was all for, because he had mentioned it on our first date. And I was like, yeah, sure, like I'll drive down there. But then that kind of happened at the end of the night. And so I kind of felt uncomfortable driving to him. So I asked him like, okay, well, let me think about it. Like, what would we do? And he was like, oh, I don't know. Like, you could come to my house. I'll make you dinner. And in my head, I'm just thinking like, this is our second date. I don't want to come to your house. If we're in a relationship, I would love to do that. And I would love to have you make me dinner. And I would love whatever would come after that. But we're like in the beginning phases of dating. So no. And that was pretty much like the final turnoff for me. I ended up telling him like, I don't feel comfortable coming down to you. And I did explain why. I kind of felt like his priorities were maybe hooking up. And even if that wasn't the case, I just didn't feel like he made me feel safe enough in an intimate way to even want to get there with him, if that makes sense. I'm sharing this story because I feel like it is important for men to know that, especially on the first, second, third date, like, you should be actively making sure that you're making the woman feel safe and respected. I promise you, like, intimacy and all of those other things will follow, but it's not going to happen if you make someone immediately feel like you're pressuring them. So that's why Newport guy didn't work out, and I honestly just lost interest. I'm in the market for a gentleman, and that's what I want.
Smart girl. It's never just cuddling with a man. Their animal instincts take over and you're the prey. You are vulnerable in that bed, so make sure it's with somebody you trust. Even going inside to his place or letting him into your place sends the message to him that you are DTF, even when you're not. I would just avoid it altogether. I hear stories all the time on TikTok, on Reddit, of girls even staying the night at a man's house on the first date because the man was slick and insisted that the woman was too tired to drive home, or even worse, he picked her up and now she's stranded because there's no Ubers in the area or he's too drunk to drive. And then the whole night he is trying to get into her pants. Like, no, you have to stay vigilant on the first date, girl. You don't know this man.
Help. I think I just got the ick from the guy I'm seeing, and the reason is a little controversial. I need your opinion, TikTok. So we went on a couple dates where when the check would come, he acted really dodgy. And in these moments, I do something that you should never do, and I reach for my purse, lip gloss, whatever, to just break the tension. And it gives them an opening where he said, oh, I got this one, you get the next, which is not a big deal. And I did that on our first date, didn't think anything of it until last night. We went to this hole-in-the-wall place that I picked, dim sum, really cheap. Sam Smith was there last night. Not the point. But after we order, the waitress comes up and says, we only take cash or American Express. I say, I have cash. He says, I have American Express. And the waitress says, what are you going to pay with? He looks like this at me, and I said, oh, don't worry, we'll figure it out. We eat our meal. I also might mention that I'm unemployed. He has a lucrative job. He ordered a bunch of stuff off the menu that I can't eat because I don't eat meat. That really doesn't matter, but I just wanted to fill in some gaps so the story might make a little bit more sense. The waitress comes and puts a bill right beside him where he refuses to look at it or acknowledge it at all. At this point, I start to take my cash out and there's just no acknowledgement. I say, how much is it? He doesn't look. Then I go to look at the bill. It's $40. So I say, okay, perfect. And I put the $20 bill down where he says, thank you. I'll get the drinks at the next place. Not clocking what's happening, I say, you don't have to do that. Finally, the waitress comes up and sees that there's only a $20 bill for a $40 check. And I understand what's happening in real time. And I say to the man, oh no, I didn't pay the whole bill. I just put down a 20. I lied and said I didn't have more cash or I would have paid it, but I didn't want to. I shouldn't have to. He then gets out his American Express Platinum and puts it down next to the $20 bill, ponders for a second, and then hands it back to me and says, here, you can keep this and you buy the drinks at the next spot. Cool. On one hand, am I the bad guy for being shallow and thinking that this is a deal breaker? Or am I a bad girl for having the lowest expectation in bar when it comes to my dates? Dating in New York is not for the faint of heart.
I went all the way to Thailand for a second date with a man I met here in San Francisco. Let's talk about it, part 2. This time we're talking about all the icks he gave me. So we covered number 1 in part 1. He was just a really unorganized traveler. Originally, we were supposed to go to Vietnam, and then we ended up in Thailand. If you haven't heard about that yet, go watch part 1. Okay, number 2 is whenever he would describe something, instead of saying, oh, that's amazing, like, wow, that's so cool, he would always say it like, amazing, like, this view is amazing. Oh, wow. That is so good. Wow. Yes. I'm literally like, oh my God. Immediate ick. The next ick is probably one of the worst icks on this list, but you tell me. Okay, I'm scared, but I'm going to reveal it on the list. Just read that for yourself. And then I can do it. Probably like, Jasmine, what does that mean? Basically, whenever he would ask me to eat, instead of saying, how was lunch? Or what did you think of lunch? He would go, how was the or do you want to get them? Are you ready to? I'm literally like, why can't you just say food or dinner? That's driving me insane. Also, I'm not a child. Why are you like over exaggerating spooning food into your mouth? Like, It was so bad. Okay, you guys are gonna have to like and follow for part 3 because this video is already 3 minutes long. Last point is what did it for me. That was the night where I was like, I am out. I'm done.
Every time I go on a blind date, I get more and more insulted. It's like, what do you think about me that you think that this is a good match for me? This was not a good match for me, like not even remotely. He like complained about how expensive the meal was. Sir, you picked this place. You didn't look at the prices on the menu? He also said like, I look different than my WhatsApp picture. It's just so backhanded, like, what the fuck? You said you were 5'8", like I was 5'6". I had a wardrobe malfunction that I was not aware of until I got home, and it was embarrassing. Absolutely not. Why did the lining come all the way up with my freaking Spanx? I was thinking at the dinner, I was like, I feel like the lining is like, oh my fucking God. I hate my fucking existence. This guy is not my husband. He is not my man. And I am not gonna be going on another date with him. We get our table and he's like, yeah, I had a drink before you got here, so I'm not gonna drink. And I was like terrified that he was just gonna watch me drink a cocktail, like that's what's gonna be the whole date. Luckily, he got food, and when the bill came, he complained about how expensive it was. He gave me nothing. Everything I had to say, he had a rebuttal. I love going to concerts. He doesn't like big crowds. I love to travel. He likes going to Miami. I'm sorry. A man whose favorite vacation destination is Miami is not my man. Is never going to be my man. Miami? No way. He was very sweet, almost to the point where I pitied him. I don't think he's a bad guy. I just think he's absolutely not my person. He doesn't like going out to restaurants. He doesn't like going out to concerts. He doesn't really care for travel. Like, what are your hobbies? Reading books. I'm so sorry. I'm illiterate. He likes going to the gym. I'm ready for this man to fat shame me in his group chat. I've never been in a relationship before, but it's by choice. Yeah, by other people's choice. I feel guilty, almost posthumous. He's a nice guy, but he was not for me. And you should not set someone up on a blind date just because they are simply single.
All right, so here's my ick story. I was dating this guy and he was a millionaire. He owned like 11 charter boats. He would take me to super nice dinners and take me out on his boat and to members only spots, but we really had nothing to talk about, and he was always trying to get me drunk so he could get with me. As soon as we'd get back to his driveway from a date, I would jump straight out of his car and into mine like, well, gotta get back to my cat. But one time, I went inside after a date to watch a movie with him. Yeah, I know, bad idea. So the whole vibe was already off. The house was pitch black with some generic blockbuster on that I was not really into, and he was trying to make out with me the whole time. I wasn't into it at all, but he didn't stop there. He stuck his tongue in my ear and was swirling it around. He was making out with my eardrum, literally giving me wet willies like it was a joke. I don't know if some men think that any hole on our bodies will correlate to like the hole down there, but it does not, at least not with me. It did not turn me on at all. It freaked me out. I even told my mom about this incident, and like a week or two later, she was like, so you still dating the wet willy guy? Like, savage mom. Y'all, there is a reason why this is a faceless channel, and it's so I could tell you stories like this with no shame. Another awkward thing he did, which it was sweet, but still, it was embarrassing. So he sent me flowers at my work, but they were delivered while he was sitting at my bar, which apparently wasn't meant to happen. He was visibly embarrassed, and so was I. The bouquet was huge, so it wasn't like a regular, a dozen flowers. It was like a $200 bouquet. It's like 4-in-1 bouquet. And my coworkers were teasing me about it. My boss was like, so who's your secret admirer? And at that point, it's just like, man, you see me busting my ass off behind the bar. Like, the money that you paid for on those flowers to get them delivered, like, could probably have covered one of my shifts. I would rather just have the money at that point. I could have paid a whole bill with that. But, I was grateful. The flowers, they stayed alive for like 10 days, which is the amount of time that I gave him before I cut him off. I was just over everything. Which leads me to say, I won't date someone just because they're a millionaire. I had enough of that guy. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, he also spelled my name wrong on the note inside the flowers that's supposed to tell me like, oh, have a good day. And that was just kind of annoying because that's all I could focus on. Like, at least get my name right, And at that point, it was after like the wet willy incident, so anything he could have done was gonna bother me. When you're just over a guy, so everything they do just pisses you off. So anyways, hope you had fun listening. Stay tuned for my next one. Love y'all. Meow ya later.